in the world. And apologies to everyone on the YouTube stream. Audio up now. Hi, Internet. Anthony, good call on that. Is that a $5 fine for me?
I'll let this one slide.
Okay, we do have the whiteboard today. We'll have it make its debut later. But there's going to be a press conference for Josh Harris, and so I solicited on Twitter questions, Anthony, for folks to ask Josh Harris. Now, instead of being like, I will take your questions to Josh Harris, because I don't even know if I'm going to be able to go based off the timing. We're going to see what we can do there. But I want to play the role of Josh Harris. And I kind of, when I was answering some of these in my head, Anthony, I did come up with a bit of a conundrum. Do I answer them as me as Josh Harris, or how I think Josh Harris will answer them?
I think you should do it how you think Josh Harris will answer them. Because I think your point of view is going to be slightly different.
Probably, slightly. So I'm going to play the role of Josh Harris. I need you, the listeners, the viewers, to give us a call, 301-230-0980, and you get to play the press. You can grill me as hard as you want to. Try to do a good job with your questions. Like some of these that I got on Twitter, they're a little rambly. You would definitely not get up in front of a team owner as a person asking a question and ask them in the way that some of these were posited. But that's the exercise. What questions do you want to ask Josh Harris? I will play Josh Harris. I will answer your questions. 301-230-0980. We can start with some of the ones from Twitter. We'll start out with no follower, NOE follower. So let's see. How many followers does no follower have? This is an important question. That's the question I have for them. We got a nice little 3,100. You love to see that. All right. So this is actually a version of a question I would like to ask Harris. And in a way, I think this person is asking me this question, not as if I was Harris. Didn't fully understand the assignment, but that's fine. Does he, quote unquote, know football or just, quote unquote, an astute businessman? His basketball and hockey franchises are impressive. Does he get heavily involved in the re-signing of key players? Sweat Young. How will he be different from Snyder? I'm curious how he'd respond to that one. Good luck. So I'm gonna pick the first part of this, and I'm gonna reframe it into the action, because this is actually one of the main questions I want to ask Harris if I get to go on Friday. So I'm gonna reframe it into that, and then I'm not gonna answer it because I don't know. This is actually my question for Josh Harris, and then we got some folks on the phones that we'll get to at 301-230-0980. The question I want to ask Harris is this. Do you have a football philosophy? What we've seen in your basketball team is you've adopted a very modern Daryl Morey inspired and then now run by Daryl Morey philosophy, analytics-based approach that says three-point shots and layups and free throws are the way to play. It shapes the way that the Sixers play basketball. Do you have a similar approach in football that will inform how you build your team and who you ultimately hire? I don't know that answer. My guess is he is going to say, no, my goal is to get someone who's had success in the league. Obviously, Ron has made a Super Bowl. He's the one in charge for right now. But in the future, if we decide to go in a different direction, I will look at all options and hire the one I think is best. That would be the answer I guess we'll get. But he might surprise us. He might say, I know, based off preliminary looks at data and following the sport as a fan, that the game has shifted away from the run. And, there's been certain coaching trees that have been incredibly successful, and we're going to look to hire off of that coaching tree. He might. My guess, though, in part because he's not going to want to step on Ron's toes and undermine him before the season ever gets going on his first day, quote unquote, on the job. He's not going to really answer that in any kind of detail. He might give you a defense wins championships, knowing that this defense is really good. But does he have a football philosophy informed by literally any factor that will affect future hiring decisions on the football side of the business? That's definitely one of my top questions for Josh Harris, and I truly don't know the answer. A lot of other questions I could guess, though, so I'm going to do my best to be Josh Harris next. 301-230-0980. I'm Harris. You're me. You're basically me. I'll answer your questions next on The Hoffman Show.
Daniel Snyder has agreed.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/at the Team 980. Taking your calls, 301-230-0980 as well. I'm going to play the role of Josh Harris. You are going to, on the phones, ask me the questions you would like to hear the press corps ask here in, or I guess on Friday when Harris is expected to hold court with the collective media in D.C. So 301-230-0980. Let's get going with this. Let's start off with Commander-in-Chiefess. You are first up. Anthony, you hitting the phones or am I hitting the phones? You got it? All right. Commander-in-Chiefess, you're up first. Go ahead, and what question do you have for me, a.k.a. Josh Harris?
Okay, Josh Harris and Magic Johnson. I'm going to be out at FedEx at the pep rally. I've been waiting for this for 20 years.
That's awesome.
So, offense, my question was two questions. Number one, the offense, as we know, that's the main thing that wins Super Bowls. My first question is, when do you plan to put Eric Bieniemy in as head coach? Number one. Number two, when is Ron Rivera's last day? Number two.
All right, thank you for your question, Commander-in-Chiefess. We appreciate your loyalty, sticking with the team over the years, and look forward to welcoming you back to FedEx Field for many games moving forward. As to your question, we currently have no plans to do either of those things, either put Eric Bieniemy in charge as head coach or to have Ron Rivera have a last day that we know when it is. Coach Rivera's been around this league for 40 years at this point as a player, as a coach. He's incredibly well respected, and I think he'll be an essential part of our transition process as we learn the best ways to go about owning an NFL franchise. Eric is obviously tremendously talented, and we certainly hope that a head coach is in his future. And who knows, could it be in Washington? That would be fantastic if things break a certain way, but we're not looking to make a change at the head coaching position at this time. And we're excited about what these two men can do together this season. Takes off Josh Harris mask, puts back on radio talk show mask. I do think that there is certainly a possibility that after the season, that is something that is considered. There are people inside the franchise that probably want that to happen. There are people certainly all over the NFL that would love Eric Bieniemy to have that shot, and that think that, and there's people all over the Commanders ecosystem, we'll call it, fans, media types, whoever, who think that Ron Rivera would be someone who is good to have in a front office, that some of his weakest points as a head coach are some of the in-game management things that you take off his plate, but his ability to manage people, his ability to, have tough conversations with players and kind of build a culture is something that he could do from a front office standpoint. And even that over the past couple of years, some of the scouting he has contributed to has been good. And if they would get rid of Martin Mayhew and get a better talent evaluator to pair with Rivera, that could be a winning combination. How fair all that is to everyone involved, I don't know. Because you can't be like, oh, well, Mayhew's terrible, but I love Emmanuel Forbes. Like, these things don't all go together. And I think that just looking at it as objectively as I can is because they've had a very mixed bag. Like, they've been a 500-ish team that has had some major misses that have turned the corner and look like they might ultimately be good players, thinking mainly of Jamin Davis. While their best players are the ones they've inherited, John Allen, Deron Payne, Terry McLaurin, Chase Young still has the highest upside of anybody, and I don't think anybody looks at what's happened with Chase and blames Rivera for that. So I'm sure someone does, but most people don't. So it's just a massive year for Ron and to show what he can do and see if they finally have this thing going in the right direction. And obviously, quarterback has been the biggest bugaboo. And if Sam looks like he's the future, then Ron's got a much better chance of staying. And so does Eric, by the way. And if not, then maybe Josh Harris is looking for a completely new staff next year from top to bottom, front office, coaching, the whole deal. It's Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. All right, where'd that Josh Harris fake mask go? All right, I got that back on. As we go back to the phones, 301-230-0980. Let's go to Cliff. Cliff, thanks for calling. What's your question for Josh Harris, a.k.a. me?
Well, I'm going to start off, Mr. Harris. As a team owner now of the Washington Commanders, what are your plans on making the team a better team a consistent winner and not being meddlesome like the previous owner, and let the football guys who've been there and done that manage the team for you while you sit back, oversee, and sign paychecks. And I'll sit back and listen.
All right, Cliff, thank you for your call and your question. You certainly seem to have an idea of how I'm going to do the job. However, I do largely agree with your premise. As you've seen with the way I operate my other sports franchises, my goal today is to speak to you today and not really be heard from much outside of that. I believe in hiring good people, and I believe in letting them work. If you look at what we've done with the Devils, they're coming off one of their best seasons in 2 decades, and it seemed to be a team that we certainly think, but a lot of other people on the outside think is on the ascent. In Philadelphia, we did obviously tear things down and do some things that I think are very specific to the NBA and how you have to team build in that league. But ultimately, we landed a man who won MVP last year, and we've had 450-win seasons in the last 6 years. And that is because we've hired and empowered the right people. And while I don't have specific answers today on who those people are and if they're the current people in their jobs, I certainly hope that they are. My goal is to look and see what Coach Rivera needs, see what Jason Wright needs on the business side, see what Martin and Marty need in the front office, and empower them and give them the resources they need to do their job to the highest level. And we think that if they do that, then we can build a sustainable winner over time. We know we got to find a franchise quarterback. We certainly hope that Sam Howell, who's on pace, to compete for the starting job this year, can be that person. But at the end of the day, time will tell. But I'm gonna give the right people the keys and the resources to do it. That's what I expect his answer to be, and that's the right answer. And by the way, that's what he's done. Now, I do think it's the Sixers are such a funny case study because they greenlit the process. They had, what was the coach? Why am I totally blanking? I can picture the guy. Anthony, help. The coach of the 76ers when they started the process. Came from San Antonio. Bruce, was it Bruce Brown? No, it wasn't Bruce Brown. It was something Brown.
Bruce.
Why can I not think of it? Wow, this is terrible.
Yeah, this is.
Oh, my God, this is awful radio, but I don't even care about that. I'm just embarrassed that I can't. Philadelphia 76ers coaches. Obviously, currently Nick Nurse. They had dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. Come on. Brett Brown. Woo, buddy. Hot damn. So they had Brett Brown. They let him coach 565 games. He lost way more than he won, but a lot of that was on purpose. And then they had Sam Hinkie, and they let him go before they turned things around. So this could be a multi-step process. The people they hire to do one part of the job aren't necessarily the people that they've kept. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. Let's keep it going. I'm playing Josh Harris, if you're just joining us. I'm playing Josh Harris. You're playing the press. You're asking me questions. I'm answering them as Josh Harris, and then I'll give you a little bit of extra on the back end. We got a bunch of calls starting to line up, so we'll probably take this a couple more segments as long as the questions continue to go and are good. You can also, if you don't have access to calling right now, you can tweet them at Craig Hoffman. You can, of course, call us 301-230-0980. Or you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream, youtube.com/@theteam980. We'll get Paulie in real quick, and then we'll take some more on in the next segment. Let's go to Paulie. Paulie, what's your question for me, a.k.a. Josh Harris?
Craig, a.k.a. Josh Harris. How you doing, man? Hail to the W. All right. Basically, I got a two-part question. First part is...
These press members, they always have two-part questions. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm doing my part. All right. So, how long do you think it'll take? We've been waiting 25-plus years. How long do you think it takes for us to make a serious Super Bowl run? And do you look at this as a rebuild or just a reprogram? And the second part is, can we trade for Joel Embiid to get him over here in D.C.?
All right, Paulie. Thank you for your questions. No, you absolutely cannot have Joel Embiid. As for the other question, and I actually wonder if there's anybody that's going to show up from Philly tomorrow and ask any Embiid, or on Friday and ask any Embiid questions. That's funny. As for how long it's going to take to build a Super Bowl winner, I think that's a great question to answer after the break here on the Team 980. Tomorrow, the end of the road for Dan Snyder as owner of the Commanders. And at this time tomorrow, the doors will be open at the Bullpen, where you can come hang out with us and celebrate Burgundy and Sold Party at the Pen tomorrow with us. 106.7 The Fan, 94.7 The Drive, WPGC. So many, basically everybody who works at this station will be there. All your favorites. I'll be hosting obviously the show, but Sheehan will be there, Russell will be there, Doc will be there, B. Mitch will be there. I think we got some current and former players potentially there. Definitely, I know former. I think might be some current players there too. So the only way to know is to come hang out. So come hang out with us tomorrow at the bullpen in Navy Yard. For right now, though, still taking more of your questions for Josh Harris, and then I'm going to answer them as Josh Harris. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. Let's go to Mark in Chevy Chase. Mark, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show. What is your question for me, a.k.a. Josh Harris?
Hey, the question for Josh Harris would be, do you have a bag of charisma? AK, do you have a hat like Jack can cook or a cane like Jack can cook? Because hopefully we'll have to get a guy who hopefully one day will win for us, but hopefully he's well-liked in town somehow. So that would be my question. Are you going to be well-liked? And hopefully when he wins the Super Bowl, we'll all be happy for him.
All right, Mark, thanks for the call and the question. I don't know how to answer. I can't guarantee that people will like me. I certainly will try to act in a way that people do. But what I would tell you is that this is my home. This is my community. This is a team that I care about deeply. And I know that alone is not something that is going to endear me to folks because if we don't win, people won't care. And if this isn't a franchise they can be proud of in the community, then people won't care. But my goal is to create a franchise that both with its on-field product and its place in the community is something that everybody that calls DC home, like I do, can be proud of. So I don't have a hat and a cane necessarily, at least at this point in my life. I guess I could buy a hat, but I don't need a cane. But I do have a lot of pride in this organization. I'm incredibly proud to be buying it and to steward it and to hopefully return it to the place in the community it held when I was a child, and everybody was proud to call this team our own in DC. And Anthony, that is what they call making chicken salad out of chicken you-know-what. That was a weird question.
Yeah, when I screened him, I was trying to figure out what he was saying, and then he was asking about a cane and a hat. And I do remember Jack King Cook, having a hat.
I mean, sure. I was like imagining the Monopoly Man, and you're just like, oh, but like an animated version who's skipping down the street. It's like somewhere between the Monopoly Man and Mr. Peanut.
Yeah.
Like charisma, nobody cares. But I do think we recorded with Sheehan earlier. We might take command with Sheehan later in the show. We'll see. We were going to play it here, but we have so many questions, and you can get yours in. There are a couple open phone lines if you want. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. And I still got some backed up on Twitter as well. But like that was a point that Kevin made that I thought was really poignant, which is when the team was in its heyday, and even not necessarily even in its heyday, but like in the late 90s when Snyder took over, it was a symbiotic relationship between the city and the team, and the region and the team. And it was a fan base that was proud of their team and was proud to have that team in the community because the team took pride of being a part of the community. And it was not just the players, but the way they did everything that struck a chord of being a part of a community in a larger sense. And frankly, I don't need to suck up to Monumental and Leonsis and what they've done, but like I think the Wizards and the Mystics and like they try to do that with their organization. They succeed on varying levels at different times, but largely like from helping players facilitate community events to doing community events on their own, being a part of a lot of different things. That's what Ted has tried to build here. And I think that is something that is super important to Josh Harris to do is get back to that community kind of feel of the team. Yes, these teams are big business, but if you go to a Kansas City, you go to a Buffalo, obviously Green Bay is kind of unique, but you go to most towns where NFL teams are and they're ingrained in the city in a way that this team just isn't anymore because Dan messed it up. 301-230-0980. All right, Josh Harris hat back on, which perhaps is a top hat. And let's go to Steve in Houston. Steve, what's your question for me, a.k.a. Josh Harris?
Hey, Mr. Harris, first and foremost, congratulations on the purchase of the team. We are excited, happy to have you aboard.
Thank you.
as a respect for your time, I was going to mention something about the name change, and you know how important it is. The team formerly known as the Redskins, but I'll kind of break that out. We more than likely we can't go back to the Redskins and things like that. So I will ask you this in terms of tradition: would you at least consider, entertain executive input from the executive team, maybe with or without the fans, at least a consideration of going back to the traditional uniforms? And that's my question. My second part, Major Tutty, do you think he needs to lose a little bit of weight? Those are my two questions, Mr. Harris.
Thank you so much, Steve, for your question. Very thoughtful, and I appreciate both all parts of this. Major Tutty, I think I think we can celebrate people in all sizes. I think Major Tutty's perfect the way he is. If Major Tutty's happy, then I'm okay with Major Tutty. However Major Tutty wants to comport himself. As to your question, you're correct. We cannot go back to the old name. While I realize it's not a unanimous opinion, even amongst Native American groups, there are a lot of people that are very hurt by that name. That term is one that certain Native American groups see as the worst thing that they can be called. And if that is the case, even if there are others who don't feel that way, I don't think it's in our best interest. And especially, as a team that we don't have, it's not like we're a team of Native Americans on our executive board, certainly not amongst the ownership group. I don't think it is our place to try to legislate that one way or another. I think it's just the safer way to continue forward with the name the way it is. As far as the uniforms go, obviously there would have to be modifications based off the old insignia and the old logos, but I do think uniforms are a place that we can innovate. What we've done in the NBA with uniforms over the last 2 decades has been really interesting as a league, and I think we see teams doing throwbacks. I know this press conference will be happening on Friday, so 2 days ago, aka today. I know Wednesday, the Seahawks put out a throwback uniform that was incredibly well received. So we'd certainly eye a modified version of the old uniform if we want to explore some new options. I think that could be very interesting. It's something that, when we have those discussions in the future, I think we'll be a part of them naturally. You always look to the past for inspiration, but there are no current imminent plans. As far as I know, this is my first day on the job, and that's perhaps a better question for Jason. That's probably some version of the answer. We actually got quite a bit into the name stuff with Kevin on the podcast, so I will point people there. That podcast will be out later today on YouTube and first thing in the morning on all audio platforms. So look for Take Command, me, Logan, and Sheehan talking about it, because I know that's something that Kevin cares about a lot, and he made some really good points. I think there's some other things where I think Kevin and I just disagree on the importance of this and kind of how a name becomes something that people care about in a major way versus something that is built over time, and kind of what the options are. But my guess is Harris would answer it some way like I just did, basically saying we're always, this is a franchise with a proud, rich history. We're always going to pay homage to it, but we're not going to bring back the name or the logo or anything like that because there's a reason we got rid of it. And that's both, I think, morally the correct stance, but also, if we want to be even kind of more calculated and cold about it, it's the right business stance. Dan didn't change the name because he wanted to or because he thought it was the right thing. Dan doesn't know up from down when it comes to the right things. Dan changed it because Nike and FedEx and others were like, hey, man, there's a summer of racial reckoning in America. You might want to change your name. A lot of people think it's racist, and they're not going to buy your stuff. And so they did. So whether you agree with that or not, there's too many people that do, and thus it's good business to keep going forward. I know Commanders isn't super well liked. I guarantee you if they win games that people will come around to it because you will all of a sudden have a positive emotional reaction to the name as opposed to the general apathy or nausea induction that happens when I say Commanders right now. All right, we got a couple more calls on deck. If you're on hold, stay there. Donald, you're going to be first up on the other end, so please don't hang up on us in the break. I'll be back in 3 minutes taking more of your questions for Josh Harris, 301-230-0980. I'll do my best to answer them as the new Commanders owner. As of tomorrow, we're just over 24 hours away from when we think the announcement's going to happen. And that's all happening next on the Team 980.
Here's what's trending on the Team 980.
Again, that vote is tomorrow. Tomorrow in Minneapolis. Other things that the owners will be considering is a contract extension for Roger Goodell. So pretty big day tomorrow in Minneapolis for the NFL owners. Mystics back at it after the All-Star break earlier today. Aaliyah Boston and the Indiana Fever came into D.C. and beat the Mystics 82-76 the final. Mystics still without Elena Deladon and Ariel Atkins, both out with lower body injuries. Nats trying to win a series on the road. Was not pretty last night, but trying to take 2 of 3 from the Cubs. 8:05 first pitch. We are also not very far from the Women's World Cup. Tomorrow it kicks off. U.S. plays their first game Friday night, 9 p.m. on Fox. That is what's trending. I'm Craig Hoffman on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Taking your questions for Josh Harris, who I'm playing in this particular scenario, a little role reversal. You guys get to be the press. I get to be Josh Harris. Unfortunately, I did open my wallet in the last break, and I'm still very much not Josh Harris. Let's get back to the phones. 301-230-0980. Donald, appreciate you waiting on hold through the break. Go ahead. What is your question for me, a.k.a. Josh Harris?
Well, Mr. Harris, first of all, congratulations. And my question would be this, and it's just a simple question since you already own the Devils, you had a vision for them, and you own the Sixers, and, you know, we know about the process, so you had a vision for them. So my question is a simple question, is what is your vision for
Donald, it's a good question. Thank you. Much appreciated. I know this might be unsatisfying because it's going to be light on details, but overall, the vision is to win. I mean, the vision is winning. How you get there is a constant evolution because the factors change at all times. The leagues change, the rules change as different positions and you know, coaches innovate and different things change. But I think the vision is to be on the front end of the curve there. Can we be a team that, like we were in Philadelphia, like we were in New Jersey, was on the front end of what the analytics tell us to do, what the data tells us to do, the way the game is going, and that we can find ways to not be playing catch up. And this is a terrible answer. I hope Josh Harris has a better way to articulate it. But I'm going to break character here and simply say this. If you think Josh Harris is going to come in tomorrow and be like, we're going to run a West Coast offense, a 4-3 defense. Our goal is to find the next Luke Kuechly and the next Patrick Mahomes. Then, you're out of your mind. That's not what's going to happen. It's going to be very vague and it's going to be very broad. And I understand that because it's hard to know. What I would hope he talks about are longevity, innovation, and being ahead of the curve. Because if you're those three things, if you're focused on not trying to shortcut things to win right now and trying to do things that will help you be competitive over time, you are going to have a way better chance of winning than if you go all in and it's a short fuse. Because while, yes, it worked for the Rams, they got the one Super Bowl, they then put themselves in a bad spot to not be competitive years later. Whereas the Chiefs, obviously, look, if you have Patrick Mahomes, you're going to be competitive every year, but they have made tough decisions that were about longevity. They did trade Tyreek Hill where they could have been like, yeah, we're going to play this out, and if we lose him, we lose him. No, they got some things back that ultimately are going to help them compete for longer. So there's this mix of we have to get the right pieces in place in order to be competitive every year, and then we're going to have to make tough decisions around those key pieces, and maybe that even evolves over time. A guy who's a key piece in year 3, by year 8 is no longer a key piece, and can you flip him for the younger version that becomes a key piece moving forward? So I hope there's about longevity. I hope there's an intent to understand where the game is going and beat people there, because there's market inefficiencies, and as an investment guy, that should be speaking to how he thinks. And I'd hope that's kind of his vision for the franchise, and I'd imagine it's some version of that based off his other stops. Take a couple more calls if we got them. 301-230-0980. I got a couple on Twitter that I wanted to get to as well. Our guy Teresh had a couple good ones, actually. How much did you interact with the Snyders during this process, and how was that interaction? My guess Harris's answer would be something like, puts Josh Harris hat on, I did interact with the Snyders. They were incredibly professional. They ultimately wanted to get this done, and we had a lot of back and forth, and that's the nature of business. And I'm very happy that we got to the end of it, and that we came to this conclusion. It's gonna be something like that. The truth is probably something closer to, I had a lot of interaction with them. They were gigantic pains in the ass, getting basic information sucked. And I never want to have to do a business deal with anybody like that again. That would be the truth serum version, but I'm sure he will be nice on the way out. What are the tangible, measurable steps you take to ensure a safe and collaborative workplace culture? This is a really good one. Actually, the next two I think are pretty fascinating. Harris comes from the world of finance where safe, collaborative workplace cultures aren't always the norm. Obviously, the NBA values this incredibly highly. I don't really know what the NHL's policies are on these types of things and how much they care, but the NBA got in a decent amount of trouble with the Mavericks a bunch of years ago, and they put a fair amount of safeguards in place, and it's a generally, I would say progressive and inclusive league that cares about this stuff in a way that I don't know that the NFL fully does. I think the NFL likes it when it's convenient, but they don't live and die by it the way the NBA does, at least to the extent. I mean, they'll want to make money, but the NBA cares more, I would say, than the NFL does. So I'm sure that there's going to be HR procedure type of stuff. There's companies and consultants that he's going to work with. I'd be fascinated to know, though. I think that's a really good question, and I frankly hope someone asks it. And then the other question that Teresh had that I thought was really good, aside from wealth, what drove you to choose the limited partners you selected? My guess is he wanted a diverse group who brings experience, a wide swath of experiences, who can help us think about solving problems in different ways. Some of the folks that we chose are very connected in important places as we look towards building a new stadium. And but every single partner has been successful in their field and is going to bring the ideas that help make them successful to our organization and ultimately help us problem solve in the best way that we can. So those are good questions, and I hope they're answered, and that's my best chance at best guess at answering them. My guy James says, when are you going to hire Ron Recuia? Recuia? I don't know how to say this guy's name, but I know who he is, for taking over a new stadium search. Double R, we're going to call him, was the COO of the Bills until today. He spearheaded the stadium project in New York, and the Bills let him go. Terry Pagula is going to take over the operations as the owner up there. That is something I think to keep an eye on. Like, Bruce sucked at basically everything, but part of the reason he was around for so long for Dan was because he was the stadium czar, because his brother was the former governor of Virginia, and the Allen family is as connected in Virginia as you can get, and Bruce is very connected in political circles because of his family, and he could grease a lot of skids and knew the right places to push to get stadium stuff done. Ultimately, everything else he didn't even give him the chance to get there, and I think he became so toxic by the end that I don't even know if he could have gotten it done. But the idea of having a stadium czar, like, is, no matter what you think of Jason Wright, even if you think the world of him, like, Jason hasn't lived in that world nearly as much. He's a 40-year-old guy who spent 8 years as an NFL player. Obviously, when you work with McKinsey, like, you start to meet people very, very quickly. Jason has a pretty substantial network of people based off a lot of different factors and places that he's worked and been and groups that he belongs to and all these different things that he's done over the years, like professional groups and different like networking opportunities he's had. So Jason is very well connected, but is he well connected in the right rooms in Congress to unlock an RFK? Well, that's where someone like a Mark Ine comes in. That's where someone like a Mitchell Rales comes in. Someone like Harris probably is pretty well connected. So, like, it's a very collaborative process, but is there someone that's going to come in as a stadium czar? That's a good question. And I think part of that is going to be Josh getting to know Jason and who else is in the building first before he makes a decision like that. But that is a name that caught my eye today, and I did have that thought of, like, this guy just did it in New York. I don't know enough about his background to know whether he could do it in D.C., Maryland, and Virginia, but he obviously knows what it takes to design, build, and spearhead an NFL stadium project. So is he someone they bring in that role? He's available. We'll see. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, Nicki Jhabvala joins us from the Washington Post. She and Mark Maskey have been all over the reporting about how we got to this point. Are there any lingering issues, and how did some of the last remaining issues get resolved? We'll talk to Nicki about it next. Hour 2 on this Wednesday. Hour 3 sees Never Read the Comments. Your last chance to go leave one on YouTube. YouTube.com/@Craig Hoffman. Of course, we're also streaming live. YouTube.com/@TheTeam980. We do use the live comments as well in Never Read the Comments. That's coming up at 6 o'clock. Right now, though, it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in. Not My Beat.
Joining us today, I would say the person who probably gave the DMV more relief than it's felt in a long time around this Dan Snyder story earlier this week when she reported along with Mark Maskey that all the legal hurdles have been cleared. Everything is in the clear. Full steam ahead towards this vote tomorrow. It's Nicki Jhabvala from the Washington Post. Nicki, hello, ma'am. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. So, you guys reported earlier this week that all the potential hang-ups, the legal things that were in the way of this deal potentially getting done had been resolved. There was an informal vote amongst the Finance Committee to approve Josh Harris's $6.05 billion deal. On the legal side of it, what do we know about how those legal issues were resolved, or is that still something that is unknown at this time?
Yeah, how they resolved it is a little unclear. What was at issue from what we were told generally, it was all related to the leaked Gruden emails and Gruden's lawsuit against the NFL. Basically, Snyder's camp and the NFL wanted the other to indemnify the other, which could be very costly. And doing so, I guess in the eyes of the public, might be an admission of fault, which neither side is willing to do. So I don't know how they resolve these issues. We weren't able to get those specifics, but from what we were told, they were able to kind of clear that hurdle, and the Finance Committee did make a recommendation to approve the sale, which should happen around this time tomorrow.
Yes, we will. This is the part of the day, 24 hours from now, where we will be on pins and needles. Well, kind of. We'll be celebrating at the bullpen. But, everyone there will be on pins and needles awaiting the official word. One thing that I always found interesting throughout the last, 6 months or so that you and Mark have been reporting is that the people that you were talking to seemed very fearful of Dan. Why do you think that was? Why was there so much fear of him or what he might do or how he might blow things up? And did you, as you're talking, you have to report what people tell you. That's the job. But you also, have your own thoughts as people are telling you things. How scared were you that this thing would veer off course at any point during the last 6 months?
I mean, listen, I just report on it, so I don't really have that invested opinion of it, but I think anybody who's covered this or been around this long enough, you know Dan Snyder's history. He's very litigious, to put it politely. And for the longest time, he said he would never sell the team. So I think it's reasonable for folks to expect that, could he back out at the last minute? Could he find a way to put a snag in all of this and blow it up? There was a lot of back and forth over these last, 8.5 months. It was a pretty tedious process for those involved and anybody covering it. So, the fact that he even announced he was considering a sale, and he didn't even say it was a sale at the time. He said potential transactions related to the team. The fact that they even released that was, I think, a shock to many because, again, for years he said he would never sell. So, that it's at this point, I think is very promising. And hopefully all goes well tomorrow and they can close shortly thereafter.
Yeah, so Nicki Jhabvala is our guest here, Washington Post on the Team 980. What is the process moving forward? What is left? There's a vote, and then what?
Yeah, so the Finance Committee will meet tomorrow morning, and then the full membership will meet in the early afternoon, and they'll vote on the sale. They need at least 24 in favor. I would imagine it'd be pretty unanimous. And then from there, it's like selling a house. You got to close on it. So I would expect that to be either Friday, if not Monday next week. It shouldn't take long thereafter. That's usually done with the attorneys behind the scenes. And once that's done, he gets the keys. Josh Harris does.
So we spent the first hour of the show having folks call in, and I was playing the role of Josh Harris. I checked my wallet in every commercial break. I'm still not Josh Harris. But
what a disappointment.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I answered these questions so well, and I still have the same amount of dollars.
Wow.
But we had them ask questions, and I played the role of Harris and tried my best to answer them. Whenever Josh Harris speaks, we've all heard rumblings, I think, that Friday he might say might have a press conference of some kind. What do you ultimately want to know from Josh Harris, whether it's about the process, about the team? Like, what are the things that are on the top of your list that you would like to hear from when he speaks?
Yeah, I think it's like most kind of what is their plan to fix this? This was once a marquee franchise of the NFL. How does he plan to restore this franchise? And will he do it in a similar way to how he improved the Sixers and the New Jersey Devils? What does this mean for the current employees, the current executives on the staff? I mean, we've been told that everybody will get a fair chance to really prove themselves, but what does that mean ultimately? What is their plan for, developing a new stadium, all those things? So I think my questions probably align with those of many fans, just now what?
Right. We did have someone directly just go for the jugular. When's Eric Bieniemy going to be named the head coach, and when's Ron Rivera's last day? So I was like,
yikes.
I don't think you'd actually ask that, but then again, maybe you would. Nicki Jhabvala is with us.
Severe.
Yeah.
Just run right over Ron Rivera. Jeez, people.
Yeah. That's far from the meanest thing someone said about Ron on this radio station. Probably today, if we're being honest. But them's the breaks in these sports talk radio streets. Nicki Jhabvala is with us on the Hoffman Show here on the Team 980. What do you think Harris can take? You obviously covered the Broncos for a long time out in Denver and keep a close eye on them. They just went through this sale process. Is there anything specifically from other NFL owners that have taken over recently that you think is important that he could take? Because I'm sure he will talk to many of them.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, he's not really new to this. He's new to the NFL, but he's not new to, running a sports team and trying to restore to this. I mean, this is what he did in Philly. This is what he did in New Jersey. And while he hasn't won a championship with either of those, he has brought the Sixers back quite a ways from where it was when he took over. I'm trying to, I don't know that there's a clear example. I don't know that there is, a blueprint of sorts at all. And this deal is so much more complicated than ones of the past. I mean, when Tepper bought the Carolina Panthers, it was just him. He bought it outright. When the Walton family bought it, they didn't have 20 LPs. This is a really interesting group. And yes, it's Josh Harris who's in control, and he'll be calling the shots, no doubt. He is the leader of this group. But I think the collection of folks that he brought around him, including, Mitchell Rales, Mark Ine, people with deep connections to the city, I think could be really interesting. And I'm just curious to see how they work together in kind of revitalizing this franchise. So, is there a close comparison in the NFL? Probably not, especially considering this team's recent history with all the controversies and the investigations, a couple of which are still pending, by the way.
Right.
So I don't know that he can really take things from other folks. Probably the biggest is just go find a really good quarterback. If Sam Howell's not it, you hope he is, but if he's not, go find a really good quarterback.
Yeah, or if you're Denver, go find Sean Payton. Unfortunately, Sean Payton no longer available.
Yeah. I don't know that I would do that either, but
yeah,
that's a different interview.
Yeah, for sure. So one of the things that everyone involved has been very careful to do when speaking publicly or on the record is to not trash Dan on the way out. And part of that is probably the fear going back to where we started this conversation. He's inevitably going to be asked about Snyder and some of the things that have gone on and how you move on and change things from what they were, which implies that there's a need for that change because of the way things were. How nice do you anticipate Harris being? Like, do you think that, and also Goodell, when he's inevitably asked about some of this stuff in the future, because I'm assuming he also speaks tomorrow, whether he issues a statement or takes questions, we'll see. But like, do you expect them to still be nice, or at least as careful as they have been, or do you expect perhaps a little bit more truth to some of the answers moving forward in reference to Snyder and the things that have gone on here?
I mean, I think they'll keep it professional. I don't expect them to go out and trash anybody. I don't think they have a direct reason, the new owners, to trash Dan Snyder. They just paid him $6 billion for his team. So, I mean, and it's not like they were a part of this directly. Yes, they were fans of the team growing up, but I mean, these guys know what they're doing. I don't think you'll see them just totally drag Dan Snyder on their way out.
Yeah,
his way out.
Yeah, I don't think so either, which is probably unsatisfying for a lot of people. But like, they're trying to move forward, and that doesn't involve bringing up old stuff. As you've talked to people around the organization over the last couple of weeks, as this thing is finally coming to a head, what's the general sense you get from, I don't know, business side people, football side people, like especially on the football side? Do people even care, or are they just ready for it to be done? And they've kind of been operating in the next phase for months without Dan present at this point.
Oh, I think they definitely care. They definitely care. And I think, like, folks on the business side, just in the ones I talk to, I don't want to speak for all of them, but, you know, I think they're all just kind of waiting to see what this new group will bring and what this means for themselves. You know, it's they're not guaranteed anything. You know, I think everybody's probably wondering if they'll be able to stick around and what that'll look like. So, I mean, I guess anytime when you get a new boss, there's that uncertainty that makes you a little uneasy. So, yeah, I'm sure there's some relief that the sale process will be over, but it kind of leads into, you know, a new kind of anxiety.
Last thing for you, Nicki, on the way out. And you're going to hate this question, so I'm going to apologize. And if you really don't want to answer it, I'm not going to make you. But
oh boy,
the Snyder Washington Post thing I always found pretty fascinating. And I'm just curious, like, you and Mark have been, and Liz for so much of it, were on top of so many different elements of this story as reporters. And to know that, like, you're not you personally, but the paper is a part of it. How did you guys handle that, you know, being the target of the person that you're covering? It's obviously you could probably go walk over to your politics desk and talk about that with any number of people. But I'm just curious how you guys handled that, considering some of this, especially when Bezos was rumored to be bidding on it, was personal in some way, not to you, but to your employer.
I mean, we haven't changed anything we've done, no matter the circumstances. I mean, whether it was Jeff Bezos who was reported, or there was, you know, this beef with the Snyder ownership, we haven't changed anything. We've done everything the same way. I mean, it's not a great answer, but like honestly, we just try to do our jobs, and it hasn't really impeded our ability to do it. Would it be nice if we had a, you know, more, you know, normal working relationship with them? Sure. But like, we got a job to do. So, and I think that's how we have approached it. You know, this is what we were hired to do. So no matter the report, we just have to go after it and make sure it's accurate and fair, and do everything we can there.
I think you guys did a great job. And that's what I guess the answer would be. But it's this weird thing when you sit down, and because I've been in similar situations, and you go down to write the sentence, and it's like Snyder, who whatever, blah, 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 the Washington Post, and you're like, this is going to get published in the Washington Post. And it's just like this weird thing. But at the end of the day, like, I think the beauty of journalism is you don't care where you do it. Like, obviously from a, you know, on a human level, you do. But like, as you're doing the journalism, you're doing the journalism. And I think you guys did a great job.
Well, thank you.
But now we get to write one more story tomorrow, and you know, then we see where we go from there. Always appreciate your time, Nicki. We'll see you out at training camp, and enjoy the last few days of the off season.
Thanks. See ya.
See ya. That's Nicki Jhabvala, everybody, with us here on the Washington Post, from the Washington Post, on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, Anthony, we finally did it. It's finally here. If you've been listening to the show this week, you might know what I'm talking about. If not, we'll fill you in next.
Daniel Snyder has agreed to...
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, youtube.com/@the Team 980. So we have, over the last couple of weeks, come up with a fine system here on the show. And we needed a way to keep track of the fines. And that involved bringing a whiteboard, which I bought on Amazon, to the studio. I bought it many days ago. I finally, Anthony, have remembered. And while you won't be able to see it on your view here, I need to figure out a better solution. I currently do have Fine Cam set up on the YouTube stream. Now, currently the whiteboard is sitting in a chair with a wall. I realize how did our wall get so scuffed behind over there?
That's a great question. I don't know.
But it's there. We have Fine Cam. And the whiteboard has the Hoffman Show fines across the top. It's got a column for my fines. And it's got right now $5. Yesterday when I brought Anthony into a conversation, who was on? Someone was on. I think it was just after we had someone on. I left a pot on the board, to use the technical terms. And there was feedback and it was bad, and so that's a $5 fine for me. Anthony's column is clear thanks to Clinton Yates, because we determined that not only are there fines, not only are there demerits, there are merits. And Clinton, based off of something that you did, cleared you of your $5 fine that you had on the board.
Yeah, so part one, Anthony Armstrong we had on.
That is correct.
That's when you got your fine.
Yes.
I got my fine erased because I saw Clinton on the TV behind me.
Right.
On the, what's the name of the show?
Around the Horn?
Around the Horn.
Wow, if he hears that, he's gonna undo your undo.
But yeah, he was in the final
segment. Yeah, he was in the final.
Yeah.
And you pointed that out. So that got your $5 fine for something erased. And then the finale here is that if we get to $50 of cumulative fines between the two of us, we will get lunch. We will each pay whatever we owe in the fines, and that would be that. Is 50 too much? Is $40 enough for lunch? I guess it depends on where we go.
Yeah, I think $40 is definitely enough. Definitely is going to cover Chipotle.
Well, yeah, it depends on where we go. If we go to Chipotle, Cava, we do go to Circa. That one's a little bit more expensive in part because I get multiple things there.
Oh.
You get a sandwich. They have this mango chicken salad that's outrageous. And then I get some sweet potato fries with it because I want some carbs in my life. Because if you don't have carbs, then your brain doesn't work. That's how that works. And
some dumplings.
I don't know if folks know, but if your brain doesn't work during a radio show, you're probably not going to talk very well. So you might wind up incurring some fines. That whiteboard might get a little bit more busy, and so that's how that'll go. I was also thinking, do we do it as a point system, and when we reach a certain number of points, and then because that gives us a little more freedom in the fines, right? So I almost knock the whole streaming platform off.
If we do points?
Yeah, because then because lunch is not going to come out to exactly $40, right?
Yeah.
So if we do a 100-point system and we establish almost the baseline of $5, a $5 fine is equivalent to a $5 penalty. There's $10 fine or 10-point fines, and then a 50 a personal foul. It's a 15-pointer. And then when the total points gets to 100, we then multiply because that makes it 100%. So let's say I have 60 points, you have 40 points. I pay for 60% of lunch, you pay for 40. I just came up with that, but I think that's a better system.
Okay. I can get jiggy with that.
You like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Which means quickly we need to redefine what is a $5 or $10 or not a 5-point, 10-point, 15-point fine. I think I think coughing into a microphone. No, here's what I'm going to say.
Egregious.
Here's what I'm going to say. If you pulled the ultimate Anthony Haney.
Yes, I think, yeah, that's
and
fair.
you get called into a segment and you turn your mic on and then clear your throat into the microphone when you could have just as easily off to the side given a little ahem and then turned on your mic, that is a personal foul. That is a 15-point penalty.
Okay. So what is the most egregious thing that you can do? Because I already know that's going to happen. I already know.
I could do the same thing,
as we
right?
speak.
I could do the same thing. But like if you get a random cough, that's like running into the kicker versus roughing, right? That's a 5-point. If you're talking all of a sudden, ahem, like, hey, you should have caught it, but these things happen. That's a 5-pointer. I think forgetting sound is a 10-pointer. That's going to be the most common penalty.
Okay. And what about
like what I did the other day is a 10. That $5 fine is going to turn into a 10-point penalty.
Okay.
You leave a pot up, something, you leave music running too long, you forget about it or something, that's a 10. You forget to, like, the standard one's a 10.
What about not my beat? Because now I have to fire everything. So that's a little bit more pressure.
We do it every day.
Yeah, but it used to be you.
That's true.
Pressing it.
That's true.
So now I'm, readjusting. That's all.
I think it depends on how late you are.
Okay.
Like, if you're just kind of not ready and it's no one really notices, maybe that's a 5-pointer. But if it's like I was completely unprepared, it's like, Anthony, we do this at 5 o'clock every day. That's a 10.
All right.
I feel like 10 is the standard. If something happens on accident and it's out of your control, but it still would otherwise be a fine.
5.
That's 5. And then if it's like egregious, that's a 15.
All right.
I think that's a good system.
Yeah.
All right. The last thing we need to figure out is a better
point system.
A better fine cam, because this is terrible. I got to figure out a better place to put this. The problem is the whiteboard is like it's meant to hang, but there's no good place to hang. Like, I would need to get hooks that can go into this wall. So we got to figure that out. So I'm going to work on that, because the other thing is currently the board is not in a place where I could write on it on the show. So what I might do, I might have to stick it like right here next to me. So we'll get that figured out in the break. Other than that, this should actually, I don't know. I don't want to set precedent for this, because your boy will get fined every day when I don't know what's coming up next on the show. Is that going to become a finable offense?
I think it should be.
If I ask you out loud on the show, hey, Anthony, what's coming up next?
Yep, 5.
Okay, that's a simple 5-yard procedural penalty. Okay, that's true. I'm not going to, I pulled up the rundown, so I'm not taking a fine on this one. Got the last minute shift in, was on the line of scrimmage. Coming up next, we're going to continue our Best Players of the 21st Century series. We got 2 divisions left. We're going to go ahead and do them now. Best player from the NFC North, each team, and then we'll wrap it up with the AFC North. That's next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, and we're always live on the free Odyssey app.
This is DC's home for Maryland Terrapins.
the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. All right, we have remade Find Cam. I think this is a lot better. I've now put the board behind me where I can see it at all times. It's a much closer camera shot. I think we're in good shape, Anthony. Feel good about it?
I like it.
All right, I've also remade the board so that it now reflects the point system as opposed to the money system. So I've got 10 points on the board. We get to 100. We count up who's got what. Percentage gets paid for lunch. Bada bing, bada boom, bada bam. All right. Who's the best player in the NFC North for each of the teams in the NFC North in the 21st century? If you have not caught one of these segments yet, we've done it a bunch of different times, so perhaps this is your time on your commute. We have done this for each and every team. I actually think I'll probably try to do this. I'm going to have to find it, Anthony. I can definitely use your help remembering when, or getting a note on when we did each of these segments so I can go find them. But I can compile them into one YouTube video. So we can do that sometime this weekend, probably. I'll throw that up. So if you missed any of them, we can do a compilation video on YouTube, youtube.com/@CraigHoffman. But we've done every division in the league but the NFC and AFC North. This started with Chris Sims on his podcast. We did it for the Commanders. Then we're like, hey, this is kind of fun for the rest of the NFC East. And off we went. So some of these are actually pretty easy. And the easiest one is Green Bay. The correct answer is Aaron Rodgers. It's not even close. Who else is even in, I don't want to say in consideration, but who else deserves a shout out, Anthony, in terms of best players of the 21st century for the Green Bay Packers?
Brett Favre.
Favre, yes, although obviously 2007 was his last year. So he was the best player for the 90s, without question. And he did, he still was very good for them throughout the entirety of his run, but no Super Bowls. Did he win MVP in the 2000s? Let me check. See, because he was an 11-time Pro Bowler, 3-time All-Pro, 3-time MVP. But his MVPs came back to back to back in 95, 96, 97.
Yeah, that's fair then.
By the way, what probably the best quarterback run in the history of sports is the Green Bay Packers. I mean, Bart Starr was their starting quarterback forever. And then actually was their coach for a long time as well. But they have Bart Starr, and then they have, a journey through the woods. They had a couple guys that, Lynn Dickey. I don't know if you know a lot about Lynn Dickey. I don't. I just saw his name on a bunch of lines in a row on Pro Football Reference right now from old Paola, Kansas. But Lynn Dickey was there for a while, but then they get Favre in 92, and it goes straight through to Rodgers, outside of the 1 year in 2017 where he's hurt and Brett Hundley leads them in passing. They've had incredible quarterback luck, but also two of the weirdest dudes. With what Favre is doing down in Mississippi and all that stuff, yikes, bro. And Aaron Rodgers smoking God knows what. Just depends on the day of the week for him.
Mm-hmm.
Other guys, Amon Green, great running back early.
Yeah. Donald Driver was beloved. He didn't have the necessary accolades. I think he was only a 3-time Pro Bowler, but he was very consistent for those guys. Charles Woodson, even though we did mention him for the Raiders.
Yes, Woodson was great for a long time. Clay Matthews was excellent for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Jordy Nelson. They've had a couple of different receivers. Jordy Nelson, Greg Jennings, Donald Driver.
Greg Jennings.
Yeah, Eddie Lacy was good for 3 years.
Yeah.
Ryan Grant was really not Ryan Grant. Ryan Grant, running back, was really good for them for a bunch of years. And then Devontae Adams is the one. Who else is a Hall of Fame type of guy? Devontae Adams, and then they've had a couple of linemen too.
David Bakhtiari.
Yeah, David Bakhtiari is the guy that I was gonna say. He's been awesome for them and even some of these Rodgers years, he's been like their highest added value player.
Yeah.
Josh Sitton was a good guard for them for a long time. So, but Rodgers, he's going to the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best quarterbacks ever. Until Mahomes came around, he was always my go-to answer of like, who's the guy who you saw play the position at the highest level? Rodgers. And it's a shame. Like, it is an indictment of Mike McCarthy as a head coach and as an offensive play caller that they don't have more Super Bowl championships. But also, Aaron Rodgers is kind of a weirdo, so maybe not. All right. That's the easy one.
And the Bears are easy as well.
Actually, some of these are all pretty easy. Like, Minnesota's not that hard.
Yeah.
Adrian Peterson?
Yeah. I mean, there's some other people you could possibly name, but yeah, AP. Undoubtedly.
Who else is on the list?
I like Jared Allen. Jared
Allen's great. Hall of Famer.
And Randy Moss. But he doesn't have a long enough tenure in Minnesota. He gave them some good years. I think it was 5 or 7.
Yeah, I mean, he was awesome. One of those years, or some of those years, were the '90s, like when he was a rookie, which is people were like, "Oh my God, this guy's incredible!" Like that was '98, I believe.
Yeah.
Allen gets to Minnesota in 2008. He makes first team All Pro. The next 2 years, makes it again another year later. So 3 first team All Pros, 4 Pro Bowls. Second AP Defensive Player of the Year in 2011. But
he ain't touching AP.
He's not Adrian Peterson.
10 solid years, like MVP.
Best player of the position.
Yeah.
I mean, insane production. Insane consistency. First ballot Hall of Famer. 7-time Pro Bowler. Some of these guys I look at it and I'm like, 4-time All-Pro? How is he not more than 4-time All-Pro? But he also, 2012, 2,000-yard season, wins MVP. Like, he has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 1,300-plus yard seasons. By the way, when he got to Washington in 2018, it was a 1,000-yard rusher, which is nuts.
Yeah.
And then he also had 1,298 in 2010 and 1,266. So if you want to, 5 1,300, 7 1,200-yard seasons. It's crazy. How are you a 7-time 1,200-yard rusher and only a 4-time All-Pro? That don't make
Chris
damn sense.
Yeah. He was going up against some somewhat, tough competition.
I guess. Randy Moss, 6-time Pro Bowl, 4-time All-Pro. Obviously in the Hall of Fame. First 2 years, though, come in the 90s. You cross over to the 2000s. He makes only 3 Pro Bowls with Minnesota. Like, he made some other ones earlier, but 2000 he makes it again in 2002, again in 2003, and then obviously breaks out again in 2007 with New England. So I think it's AP best mix of consistency and excellence. I think JJ is going to have a shot when all is said and done, assuming that he stays there a while.
Man, what?
But I think that's it. Anybody defensively? I mean, they had some obviously terrific defensive players, but
Antoine Winfield, he comes to mind.
Yeah, Kevin Williams was really good, super underrated.
Yeah.
But I think Harrison Smith, the safety, awesome for a long time. Not Adrian Peterson.
Yeah.
All right. So that leaves us with Chicago. Urlacher, is that your guy?
Yep.
Is there anybody? That's one where, is there anybody else remotely close? They've been so mediocre to so bad for so long.
I mean, if you want to put Devin Hester up there.
Yeah,
sure.
I mean, Hester should go to the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. He's the best return guy ever.
Yeah. Urlacher, though, first ballot.
They've had so much mediocrity. I mean, Matt Forte was good for a long time. Cool. Like, Jay Cutler's the best quarterback they've had in forever. By the way, I have an incredible Jay Cutler story. A girl I went to college with, she co-hosted a music radio show with me in college. Was one of my best friends. She's from Chicago. Hated Jay Cutler.
Dang.
And Kimmy went on to and still has a successful career in music radio. And some of that is she's worked her way back to Chicago. and a cousin, I think it was, of Jay Cutler was a listener of her show, and she would just murder Jay Cutler. Like, for years after he retired. Like, anytime that she, like, something was soft, she'd be like, oh, just like Jay Cutler. Just murdered him.
That's actually hilarious.
The cousin hears it, tells Jay Cutler, Jay sends Kimmy a signed football. And it's like, I heard what you said about me. Thanks for your support, Jay. A+, no notes. Excellent job, Jay Cutler. All right, so Urlacher. Lance Briggs was really good, by the way. The second best player might be the guy who played next to Urlacher the whole time. All right, and then that leaves us with
the Lions.
The Lions. Oh boy.
And this one, I mean, I think it was between two people.
Who are you nominating for the Detroit Lions?
I mean, I would nominate Calvin, and then you got Matt Stafford.
Yeah. I think it's got to be Calvin.
Yeah.
I think when you mix excellence and longevity, like obviously he, like Barry Sanders before him, retired early, but he was the best player in the sport for most of his career at his position.
And his team stunk.
Like, it's a shame that he's only a 3-time All-Pro. Dude was, over 1,000 yards. He played 9 years, 7 of them. And he was 756 as a rookie. He was 984. He was 16 yards short in his third year, in part because he only played 14 games. But he was reliable. He played at least 13 games every single year of his career. He was over 100 catches in 2012. Actually, maybe that's part of it, is like his catch numbers weren't as high. But like, he was playing with no ones. And he was playing with Stafford, so he did have a good quarterback. But like, their coaches were bad for a lot of it. They just what a bad, rough break of a career. He was a Pro Bowler the last 6 years of his career.
Yeah.
And he's already in the Hall of Fame, which is crazy because he's only 37 years old. Like, he could probably, like, if there's ever a dude that could still play after being inducted to the Hall of Fame, that's the guy.
No question.
Anyone else worth mentioning? I don't think so.
No.
Barry Sanders retired in the 90s.
Not even close.
Your Charlie Batches. Obviously, Stafford's really, really good. Stafford should have his number retired in Detroit, in my opinion. Had a ton of 5,000-yard seasons. Was awesome for a long time. And Ndamukong Suh had a bunch of good years, but, like, man, that's some bad, bad football for a lot of years. They actually have more 9-win seasons. They did also win 11 games in 2014, something the Washington football team hasn't done since the 90s.
I mean, the only other person I guess you could mention, Darius Slay.
Not nearly.
No, not. I'm just talking about. Yeah,
you should apologize to Matthew. Like, we mentioned a bunch of dudes. You should apologize to Stafford and CJ for mentioning.
They're
Darius
in their
Slay.
own realm. You named Ndamukong Suh. I was just throwing out other.
Suh was
names.
at least like the best defensive tackle in the league for a small stretch.
Yeah, and he was crazy and stumping on people. And
that's true. He was the reason they won some games. Darius Slay was like, he was really, really good. Like, he's awesome.
Yeah,
but I'm not nearly as impactful. All right, do the same exercise next for the AFC North. That wraps it up. Never read the comments coming at 6 here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. All right, Anthony, we got to move quick. Wrapping up our series, the best players on each franchise in the 21st century with the AFC North. Who do you want to start with?
Let's go with them Steelers, man.
All right.
Let's go with them Steelers, baby.
For me, this one's actually not that hard.
Okay.
Because there is one player who is there is a ton of good players. This is hard, right? I can't stand Ben Roethlisberger. He's a bad dude. But he was great for a long time, if we're looking at it purely through a football lens. Joey Porter was great. Also kind of a crazy person. Marquise Pouncey at center, probably a Hall of Famer. So good. Alan Faneca is a Hall of Famer on the offensive line. His career started in the 90s, but the bulk of it and all of his accolades come in the 2000s, where he's a 6-time All-Pro and 9-time Pro Bowler. Obviously, currently, T.J. Watt is somehow on pace to potentially pass his brother, who we've already named as the Texans' best player. But when I think of the Steelers and I think of the best player, Troy Polamalu played safety like nobody else we've ever seen play safety before, after. There are other guys that have elements of the game, and I'm not saying he's the best of all time. But what he did was so different and unique that for me, despite all of the greatness I just talked about, it's Polamalu.
I agree, Craig. I'm going with Troy Polamalu. I thought you were going to go with Ben Roethlisberger at first.
No.
I'm going with Troy.
I hate Roethlisberger, so.
I'm going with Troy, man. For all the reasons you just named. His impact, just how versatile he was. And, he was all about winning, man.
There's some guys who redefine positions. And, you look at someone like Jamal Adams at his best. Does he do, some of the stuff Polamalu does, where he's just everywhere? Sure. But Polamalu didn't redefine the position. He just broke all the rules of what it meant to play it, and nobody else could replicate it.
Yeah.
Even Ed Reed. Ed Reed is a prototype. Ed Reed is the ultimate single high safety. Didn't matter where the ball was thrown, sideline to sideline, he could get there. And he could trick people. Peyton Manning has talked about, there was a route where Ed Reed intentionally baited Peyton into a throw by running the wrong way and then circled and got back to the sideline on a perfectly thrown ball and picked it off. Ed Reed broke the mold. And maybe he's the answer to another team in this division. But Polamalu, there's no mold. He just was the best. He just was different. And so for me, that's that. What about the Ravens? Reed, Ray Lewis?
That's so tough.
I think it's one of those two guys, right?
The crazy thing is, they both are on my Mount Rushmore for defensive players all time. Both of them. Ray Lewis and Ed Reed. So I don't really have anyone to lean on for this.
Reed is a 9-time Pro Bowler, 5-time All-Pro, in the Hall of Fame, entire career in the 2000s. He played 11 years in Baltimore. Ray Lewis
crazy 17 seasons, man.
Started though in the 90s. But exploded in the 2000s. 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. He is a 7-time All-Pro. 6 of them are in the 2000s. 12-time Pro Bowler. 2-time Super Bowl champ.
Probably got to go Ray.
I think it's got to be Ray. I think Ray
Defensive
Lewis.
Player of the Year awards, they matter. They count.
Yeah. Reed had one, though.
See,
that's crazy.
God dang.
Did he? No, sorry, hold on. Yeah, he did. AP Defensive Player of the Year. 1. Nuts, man.
Yeah. Crazy.
I think it's Reed, though. I think it's Lewis.
Yeah.
All right. Cincinnati Bengals. This is where it gets harder. I think we probably would both agree that if you ask us in 5 years, the answer will be Joe Burrow. Yep. And I think Jamar Chase is super special. He might wind up being second.
But today,
I think it's down to 2 guys, unless I'm forgetting someone on defense.
Okay.
I think it's either A.J. Green or Carson Palmer.
You're taking AJ over Chad?
Yes. Chad was great. Although, man, AJ Green never made a first-team All-Pro. Do I have to rethink this? Carson Palmer was very, very good. But he's only a 3-time Pro Bowler. I don't think, actually, he's in the same class. So I'm going to knock Palmer out. Chad Ochocinco. Chad Ocho. I'm going to have to do this.
And they have a lineman, too. What is his name? Willie Anderson?
I'll look it up in a second. That's one where there might be an O-line sneaky correct answer.
Willie Anderson.
Chad Johnson made less Pro Bowls, 6 to Green 7, but he was a 2-time All-Pro.
Talking about the peak of their powers. And my man Willie Anderson, 4 Pro Bowls, 3-time All-Pro.
And that was all in because he did cross into the.
He played for the Ravens one season, but most of it.
Yeah, no, it's all of his accolades in Baltimore. I think we break the tie by giving it to old Willie Anderson. I don't want to decide between the receivers.
I like it.
Okay. And that leaves us with, who am I forgetting? There's one team in the division. We did Steelers. We did
Browns.
Ravens.
The Doodle Browns.
Oh, the Browns.
The Browns.
That's easy, though. Joe Thomas.
Yep.
Hall of Famer, left tackle. We don't even need to name anybody else. They've been terrible for most of the time. God bless Joe Thomas, who, by the way, this week was named as the guy who will get the last speech. He's the last guy in the Hall of Fame induction this year. So congrats to Joe Thomas. Thoroughly entertaining media personality now. Hall of Fame left tackle, who I believe holds the NFL record for most consecutive snaps played. He played like 10,000 straight snaps.
Yeah.
Insane. Consistency, excellence. He's the reason Trent Williams doesn't have more first-team All-Pros. So Joe Thomas is the correct answer. And that's a good conclusion to our series. Best players on each team of the 21st century. I'm sure when we compile this and put it on YouTube, we'll get lots of hate comments, which is just how we like it. Because that gives us fodder for Never Read the Comments. And we'll look at the time. It's almost 6 o'clock on a Wednesday. That's next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Tomorrow, make sure that you're coming to hang out with us at the Bullpen. We'll see you there. Party at the Pen, Burgundy and Sold. Starts at 4:30. That's when doors open at the Bullpen. Obviously, the show will still start at 4 o'clock. We'll be broadcasting live, so you can hang out with us. But there's going to be it's actually going to be quite a challenging show for me as someone with immense ADD, as there's going to be a giant party going on around us. We will also be a part of the party. It's a whole thing, and we look forward to it tomorrow. We do expect by this point tomorrow the deal to have been done, or at least the vote to have happened, because that's really what's happening tomorrow. Friday is the earliest that it will be closed and the official handover of the team happens. But the vote to approve happens tomorrow. That's kind of the big day, and thus tomorrow we party at the Bullpen. Come out and join us, Burgundy and Sold, starting at 4:30, and at some point around 5:30. We think the announcement will come that the vote has been completed. But 6 o'clock on a Wednesday, you know what time it is. It is time to ignore the advice, ignore the pushback, ignore the warnings of all the people who say, "Hey, just post whatever you want on the internet, but don't engage. Don't dare go into the comments section. That's the worst of the worst. Your Twitter replies are one thing. Your replies on Threads are actually quite lovely because the mean people haven't found Threads yet. But on Twitter, it is what it is. You know what you're getting into. But God forbid, do not go into the comments. And yet, Anthony Haney, each and every week, what do?
We read those comments, baby.
That was a good one. Excellent job out of you. Bravo. You feel good about it?
I do.
Okay, good. All right. You can leave your comments in one of three places. There are three channels we check for this segment. We'll hit two of the three today. You can leave your comments at youtube.com/@theteam980, where we post on-demand content and stream live daily from 4 to 7. We also, of course, have a lot of on-demand content, both from this show and from Take Command on my page at Craig Hoffman on YouTube. And then today we're actually going to dive into some of the Take Command comments where we post the full episodes of Take Command at 1067 The Fan. We start on my page, though, with some comments on Take Command and our conversation with Ross Tucker, who we had on earlier this week. And Tucker questioned Ron Rivera's choice. It was kind of a weird question, I will admit, because he was saying, why the hell are you going with Sam Howell this year? But also, because Ross actually kind of understands it and believes in Sam Howell and liked what he saw, said, hey, man, why didn't you go with him for part of last year? And some folks agree. LaCarlo Moore, 7121, says, Ron dropped the ball last year after the New York Giants tie. Should have started Sam Howell the second Giants game instead of the Dallas game, to give more sample size. I just don't know who honestly they are. I know that they can maybe win 8 games or maybe 7, but I have to wait to watch them in the preseason. I think they should still go after a left tackle, wide receiver, and linebacker before the final roster. I don't know what you want at wide receiver. They've got one of the best groups in the league. Linebacker, they've got a guy they drafted in the first round. Left tackle, Leno's fine. At this point, when people say stuff like this, Anthony, on that part, I'll address the Rivera thing in a second, but who do they think is available right now?
I don't know. I'm available.
Cool. You ready to play left tackle better than Charles Leno?
Oh, no, not that.
What about linebacker better than Jamin Davis?
Not that either.
Are you ready to play, even if you want to go depth, are you ready to play receiver better than De'Ami Brown?
I don't think I am.
Marcus Kemp?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. I'm just figured I would check.
Are you ready to play?
Hell no.
I'm just curious.
I did get my press credential today for training camp.
Oh, I do got to do that.
I think CK will do it for you. Just make sure you tell him.
Okay.
And if not, if he's already done it and you missed the boat, then yeah, you should do that.
Yeah.
As far as the Howell thing, again, do y'all not remember that they were in the contention for the playoffs? You're not going to throw I guess I don't say I don't care how much you like him, because there's a lot of people that like him because they think he's going to be the next coming of Russell Wilson or, in Tom Brady. Insert your late round pick who's become awesome here. But, unless you know he's that guy, and you don't, you're not throwing him into the middle of the season. I do think there's something to be said about if he's shown some things at practice and you thought he was legitimately your best option, fine. He did play probably better in that Dallas game than any other quarterback play in the previous couple of weeks. Taylor wasn't particularly good in the Giants games, and that ultimately is why after their playoff chances were hanging by a thread, they go back to Carson, which was a disaster of decision, and who could have seen that coming? But there just wasn't a great window unless you thought Sam was legitimately your best option. And perhaps that's a legitimate argument to make in the Cleveland game. You just say, hey, we're going to see what happens with Sam. And if he guides us to the playoffs, he guides us to the playoffs. I think probably the best move would have been to go back to Taylor and trust that he'd figure it out. But they ultimately went to Carson, and, we saw what we saw. And, I don't know how much of a different, a bigger sample size doesn't mean you're going to make a different decision going into this year either. I guess unless Sam was terrible. So there is that. We also talked about kind of the strategy of how they move forward with Hal and what we saw from them last season. And Ross Tucker referenced the Eagles game. They beat the Eagles because they ran the ball, Joe Gibbs formula. Ron is all chips in on Sam, and I agree. I think the run-pass ratio this year is going to be one of the more interesting statistics to watch because I do think they came out of last year I'm not going to do the Martin Mayhew twist the quote bit where they want to have 2-1, but they definitely came out of the year thinking we need to run the ball way more. And I think Bieniemy came in and was like, no, you don't. You need an effective running game. And obviously Bieniemy is going to he's a running back and a running backs coach before he became an OC. It's a guy who's going to believe in the run game and what it can do. But I think it's just a much smarter use of play action. I think it's screens and things like that as an extension of the running game. I think there's going to be a lot more variety in the running game this year, but they will still run it. And how much are they, are you maybe a 60-40 team if you say drop back versus runs plus screens plus shovel passes plus all that, plus quick game? Yeah, I think that's feasible. And I think that's just a way you can win and be successful. And it gives yourself a chance at more explosive plays than traditional runs because a screen can be a big play if it's executed well, a lot easier than a handoff can. Especially if you have, good misdirection and you get a few defenders out of the way that way and then you hit the timing right and off you go. But I also think there's things you can do that are not quick game and not screens and things like that are still not drop back pass. And that's where you get into your play action games, your boots, your keepers, your half rolls, all things like that I think are going to be a lot bigger part of this offense than last year, and that will be ultimately good for Hal. So do they need to insulate the quarterbacks better than they did last year? Yes. Will that help insulate the offensive line that is better than last year? Hell yeah. But does that mean running the football like maybe they thought they were going to need to coming out of last year? I don't think so. We spent a lot of time earlier in the week, including yesterday, on the running back situation in the NFL and why running backs are just frankly kind of screwed on their contract situation. Paper Tags commented and said, allow running backs to become free agents after 2 years. I think that is a big unintended consequences bad type of situation. Because what happens if a guy gets hurt? What happens if he stinks? And he had a 4-year deal coming out as a rookie that was of guaranteed money, and early round picks get that, versus now you're a free agent after 2 years, you're not getting that money at all. So what I don't think running backs specifically are going to look for is a mechanism to take away guaranteed money. The question is, how do they get more of it? Considering they can't become free agents till 4, 5, 6, 7 years into their career if you're a first-round pick whose 5th-year option gets picked up and then you get franchise tagged twice. That's 7 years. So you'd be entering year 8 of your career with 7 years of NFL service under your belt by the time you become a true free agent for the first time. You're probably not going to get a big money single-year deal, but you're definitely not getting a 3 or 4-year contract in the same way that a wide receiver, a quarterback, even an offensive lineman or defensive lineman would. And that's the problem. Is there a way to trigger something earlier in the contract to guarantee money based off performance. That would be my solution. And I do think a solution that I came up with yesterday when J.I. Halsell was on the show that was that I think actually would work is if a guy, and I would want this for all positions, by the way, if a guy makes all pro, or let's say he makes 3 Pro Bowls in his first 5 years or 4 years, he can't be franchise tagged. I think limiting the market of the top players is bad business. And I said this multiple times over the last couple of days, but I'll say it again here. Big double underline emphasis. If the business model is to rely on cheap labor and it's working, you've got to find a way as the labor to readjust the market. So what I mean by that is if the whole point is as owners, we can find cheap labor that doesn't hurt our chances at winning. How can we remake the structure of contracts and remake the market if we're labor, so the union, in a way that if you want to chase cheap labor, you're going to lose football games? And I don't know there's a perfect formula for that because the NFL is very unpredictable. There's a lot of hidden gems. There's a lot of guys that are just the right fit in the right system, and they sign a deal as cheap labor, and it turns out they're really good, and then a couple of years later, they're too expensive, and they wind up getting replaced by someone else. They go sign a deal somewhere else. Like think of William Jackson III. Cheap labor in Cincinnati because they draft him. He hits free agency. He goes to Washington on a significant deal. Sure, he made a lot of money and no one's going to feel bad for him, but he doesn't work out in Washington. Now he's damaged goods and he goes and signs for less money somewhere else. What if he just stays in Cincinnati? Like, what if he goes somewhere? Like, the fit and how the career plays out. And the results have to matter, but that's kind of my point is if the results are good, how do we encourage team? And this is the other aspect of it. I was thinking about this the other day. Is there a way if you re-sign a player that it counts like his money is only 90% on a cap hit? Because there's two different things we're talking about here. There's cash and cap. The players care only about cash. How much money is going into my bank account? The teams, I'm not going to say they only care about cap, but when they're roster building, they only care about cap. The owner cares about cash. Hey, I don't want to give that guy all my money. I find a way to be a good negotiator and get his number down. But as a GM who's looking at like percents on a spreadsheet of the salary cap so I can build a roster and I can give certain percent to quarterback, certain percent to wide receiver, et cetera, if there's a way that I'm incentivized to keep my own players, which is good for the league from a marketing standpoint because you get players staying in one market over time, and it doesn't count quite as much on my cap, / I feel comfortable, as long as my owner's cool with it, paying a little bit more than others might in cash, knowing it's going to count the same as my cap. I can offer, this math I don't think actually works exactly like this, but basically 110%. You're trying to get to the 90% number, but you get the point. You can offer over what others would and have it count the same on the cap. That seems like something that should be considered, but again, the GMs aren't at the negotiating table when it comes to collective bargaining. Owners and players are. Owners and players care about the cash and not the cap, and thus a creative solution like that is absolutely not going to be in the cards. Lots of comments on our videos about the Harris deal kind of being cleared earlier in the week when Nicki and Mark posted their story in the Washington Post. I made an analogy about clearing the woods. Reader Casey says you should have done it like Zord and trying to compare it to whitewater rafting. Was there, Anthony, I know you weren't, you were still a child when Jim Zorn was coaching. How old were you in like 2009?
2009, I was 13 years of age.
Were you locked into Jim Zorn press conferences?
I watched.
Was there I want to know what the Jim Zorn whitewater rafting reference is to. Jim Zorn whitewater rafting. What famous... Oh, here we go. Jim Zorn knew his status as the head coach of Washington was tenuous back when his team was 1-1 and coming off a victory, no less. Ever since then, as the losses have mounted, this is from The Reporter. He's grown accustomed to the whispers and the stares and the general sense from all sorts of people that his job was in jeopardy. Apparently, he compared it to whitewater rafting of some kind, but not in this article. Why was that the first thing that came up? Someone in the comments to this video, when this posts online on demand, or if someone has access to it right now watching the live stream, drop the Jim Zorn whitewater rafting reference because I want to know about it. I need to know about it with every fiber of my soul. There's a lot of people, Anthony, that say, hey, time to turn the page. I just can't wait for football. The Commanders should officially be under new ownership by Friday. Rookies will be in training camp also on Friday. The veterans arriving 4 days later. Everything else is drama for the tabloids and the Washington Post. I get it. And look, most of the time we're going to talk football on this show. But, I do think that there's a little bit of underestimation, I'll call it, by the fan base, that other teams don't deal with personnel drama. Now, is it mostly head coaches and, GMs and stuff like that versus the owner? Yeah. Has been a special kind of hell here the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 24 specifically years? Absolutely. Is there a lot more airtime that gets spent on this radio station and others and ink spent in print because they still print the newspaper, digital ink spent on their websites, written about things that are in regards to ownership here versus other places? Absolutely. But sports, Dan Le Batard says this all the time. Sports is a giant male soap opera. We generally, as dudes, which is still the majority of the fans, but also ladies who care about sports. Everyone who cares about sports says or a lot of people say, I just want the games. You don't. You care more about the transactions than the games. You care about free agency. You care about trades. You don't call and be like, sometimes, yes, in the middle of the season, that third down, whatever. Or that, Wes Unseld Jr.'s defensive schemes. But you know what moves the needle a lot more? Trades, free agency. Hey, is he the right guy for quarterback? That's not the game. That's not just football. That stuff is football adjacent. But it's the drama, it's the storylines, it's the human beings. And I am excited to be in an ecosystem where we're talking about the same stuff that everyone else talks about that. So I'm not trying to poo-poo the sentiment of that comment. But let's not pretend like we're now entering this pure mode where all we're going to talk about is receiver depth on the dagger on third down and whether Bieniemy made the right play call and if it was executed right by each and every guy and how the offensive line passed off the stunt. That's not how any of this works. I care about that stuff. I'm a big old nerd about that stuff. But if that was all it was, it actually wouldn't be that fun. Let's see. Do we got time for one more, potentially? Oh, yeah. We got time for one more. Our guy Merle. Spelled M-E-R-L. Merle Garrett. When the legalese and the legal snafus hit earlier in the week before the story that cleared them, I'm starting to believe that the owners don't want Josh Harris as an owner. Plus, Dan has dirt on everyone. I believe Tanya Snyder doesn't want to sell the team. And I responded to Merle, who comments just the most backwards things all the time with, your consistency of bad takes is incredible. He said, we will see on July 20th. Well, Merle, that is correct. We will technically see tomorrow on July 20th when this vote happens. And I'm willing to bet every dollar in my bank account that I am right. Merle. Really? Nothing, Anthony? You're just going to let me keep doing that?
I heard you. Merle. Is it M-U-R-L?
M-E-R-L. I gotta pull Merle back up. I gotta pull his comment back up. I just X'd out of the page. You gotta see Merle's picture for it to make sense.
Oh man.
So you gotta go to YouTube and go to the videos and find Merle. And I think people will get it.
I think you really like his name.
He just looks. He's got a big Eeyore vibe. You're just sad and everything. The sky is falling all the time, and I'm just like, nah, man. Like you're really bad at reading tea leaves, which is fine, but get your negativity out of here, Merle. That's Never Read the Comments. You can leave a comment at 1067 The Fan on any episode of Take Command. Any of the clips on demand from Take Command or this here radio show at Craig Hoffman, or you can leave live on the Team 980 at the Team 980 on YouTube or on any of our on-demand content. We get back here on the Hoffman Show. We do have a blank in the rundown, Anthony. So this is not me not knowing what is next. We do have a blank in the rundown. Anything in particular that you want to talk about next?
In particular,
We'll brainstorm in the break.
Yeah, I think brainstorm.
Mystery box surprise next on the Hoffman Show. the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Again, tomorrow, you do not want to miss it. I'm gonna read straight from the script as I knock over the fine board. Is that a fine? That'd be the most meta fine of all time. Knocking over the fine board is not a fine. Ooh, I'm making a lot of noise now. That could be a fine. Oh, we're gonna have to reset that. That's unfortunate. Okay, tomorrow, when the votes are finally tallied, the party is on. Commanders fans, Washington football fans from all over the DMV gather at the bullpen in D.C. for our Burgundy and Sold party. Say bon voyage. That's how I wanted to read the script, Anthony, because I wanted to be able to say bon voyage. Bon voyage to Dan Snyder with live music, beer, food trucks, Team 980 broadcasting live. Special guests including Commanders alumni, Sports Junkies Brian Mitchell, Doc Walker, WPGC 94.7 The Drive, and some surprises. Burgundy and Sold party at the Pen. Doors open at 4:30 Thursday. Bullpen on Half Street. All right. We are going to, for you right now, or at least in one moment, play a conversation that we had earlier today on Take Command with Kevin Sheehan, who will be with us live tomorrow at the Bullpen. I thought it was really interesting. We talked about kind of putting a bow on the Dan Snyder era. And the conversation turned in a direction I didn't expect. I know Sheehan has been on what you're about to hear for a while, but I thought it was interesting how pointed he was in his in what he thought needs to happen and how sincere he was in what he was saying in terms of the branding and the name and how all that is going to be moving forward. So Logan asked the first question on this, and Anthony, it looks like there was an error exporting this, which is not ideal. So do you have it? Does it look at the file and make sure that it actually looks like a good file? Because I've got a goofy one here. Yeah, the file goofed up, which is going to make it hard to play. I don't know what's going on with the export here. That's less than ideal. Tell you what, I'm gonna do something that never done before. We're gonna try this, and if it works, great. If not, we'll have a discussion amongst ourselves. But I'm gonna hit play on the stream first, and then we're gonna hopefully, because I have the video version ready to go on the stream. So Stream World, you're definitely getting this. Radio World, you might get it in a moment. Here we go on the stream.
Treat people well and be humble, for starters. Hopefully you'll have a likable ownership group. That'll mean a lot, I think, to the community. But more important than anything else is establishing a way to create a winning culture. And I think that starts with, accessing the best of the best and hiring somebody to oversee and run the football operation.
Back on the field.
And then get out of his way. And trust in it and let it breathe and let it marinate and give it time. And hopefully this group is good at identifying talented people and not meddling. And then I, believe, it's not accessing the best of the fan base believes that this ownership group has to address the name and the brand. At the very least, they have to take it seriously in terms of, there's a majority of this fan base that does not like the team name or the brand that is associated with it for whatever the reasons are. And there's no value in this current brand. It's been here since February 2nd, 2022. There's no equity built up in it. And whether they change it or not, I think it's important for them to appear to be serious in approaching this subject, because it's a very touchy and serious and important subject for the majority of their past fans and probably a majority
brand,
of their
you know,
present fans as well. I don't know about their future
second
fans,
2022,
but I think that's something that needs to be taken seriously regardless of how it plays out. Because it's a very this current brand, you know, it's
name. No, you don't.
a little bit of that, Craig. I don't disagree with you. I don't know what the answer is. I mean, I have a preference. I know the old name won't come back. My preference would be that Washington become the brand. I think the issue with this situation versus, you know, a new organization or a startup is that there was a 90-year or close to 90-year emotional attachment to the last brand. So whether, you know, so really more so than a startup situation, an expansion team, you were really gonna, I mean, look, I'm not a fan of a lot of the way things have been handled. A lot of the public-facing things have been handled, Sean Taylor, et cetera, the execution of the rollout of the name. But it was an impossible task for Jason Wright and Will Misselbrook in that group. You were never going to please everybody. And whatever it changes to, if they decide to change it, you're never going to be able to please everybody. But there's something in the way this rolled out, the lack of energy by the people that actually came up with it, the clumsiness in the handling of it, the changing of the uniforms, I think, is a big thing for a lot of people. It doesn't look like the team that they, you know, grew up rooting for. I think there is an answer here. I think the answer is Washington is the brand. Washington football team, FC Washington, Washington FC. Out, and the lack of all about Washington being that actually came up with it. And like with soccer, there are nicknames that come about with the fan base. And many people might choose Hogs or Skins or whatever. I mean, you know, the Washington Senators were here after the Washington Nationals were here. They changed the name to the Senators after many years, but many fans just call them the Nats for years, even before the latest iteration, the 2005 iteration of the team. But the bottom line is this is a very real subject and issue for the majority of fans, and they should be able to multitask. Winning's the most important thing. That's the focus. But they can do more than one thing simultaneously. And I think they should explore whether or not this name and everything associated with it is a plus or a minus moving forward. If they decide, look, we went through everything and we took this seriously and we looked into this and we're going to stick with it for the following reasons, I think people could live with that. But I think that they need to be serious about this being an issue. That would be my recommendation anyway. Serious about this anyway.
So I mean, obviously, the Defenders or the the DC or Washington.
The answer on a nickname. That's why my recommendation would be make Washington the brand.
That happen, because I feel like
I know Washington football team felt a little clunky, but ultimately Washington was the focus. You know, the name change was jarring, but the realization that the name had been changed really hit home for a lot of us on February 2nd, 2022, when the actual replacement name happened. But anyway, look, I don't have any issue with those that say, no, just stick with it. It's fine. I'm fine with it. I'm not about to lecture people on their emotions. This is a very emotional issue for people. And so I know that, well, it's my belief, and I think a lot of the polling from a lot of us through Twitter or whatever has indicated an overwhelming percentage of people who call themselves fans or called themselves fans think that the name should be changed. But to your point, not about to lecture people, there's not a magic bullet answer. It's a big challenge. Although I do think something that, relates a little bit to the past, like Hogs has a better chance of sticking and being more popular. Craig, to your point, maybe the new group rolling out the new name and doing it with just slightly more energy than the last group did, and it not being associated with Dan, although I don't really associate Dan with this name. I associate Jason and Will Misselbrook and the whole team that came up with it more than I do Dan, but that's just me. But I don't know. I don't have like the obvious solution. That's the problem. This conversation is very complex. I do think Washington solves the, I hate the new name you picked. I hate Hogs, or I hate Red Wolves, or I hate, whatever. Dan's plan all along was Warriors. They had that marked, and then they didn't renew the mark. And I actually think that if that's what the team's name was right now, and they had the same color scheme, uniform scheme, etc., I think it would have been more acceptable to more people. But I don't know. It's not an easy conversation. It's not an easy solution, but I think it's easy for new ownership to address this, look into it, explore it, and take it seriously. I think it would be a mistake for them to come in and say, yeah, we're not even considering anything related to the name or brand. We're sticking with it. We're fine with it. I think that would be a mistake. It's not an easy... anything related to the name or I don't know. It's not an easy Looking forward to seeing you guys. Thanks.
the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. I think we have found a. By the way, Anthony, what the hell is this? What did you just play? Am I have to? I was on the stream showing the fine board. Am I gonna have to go over there and write something on it?
Why am I getting fined?
What was that?
It was some Pearl Jam.
What? Why?
First of all, I wanted to see your reaction because I knew you would be so confused.
Mission accomplished.
I can tell that it's not your cup of tea.
No, like nothing wrong with Pearl Jam. It was a very aggressive Pearl Jam. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of Pearl Jam's thing.
I'm actually in tears.
Why but like you just did it for kicks and giggles?
Sometimes I just want to play a song that's going to throw you off. Like we took the Rebecca Black thing and made it into something that we do every week, a weekly thing.
Yeah, but like that's got a purpose. It's Friday. There's an undeniable vibe.
Yeah, that's fair, but
you've been playing like happy see you later music all show because tomorrow we're gonna say goodbye to Dan Snyder. And then you just hit me with like the angry Pearl Jam, and I'm like, is this a song that I should know? I should get the reference? And you're like, no, I just felt like messing with you.
Pretty much. Curveball.
That was it. I swung at the fastball. Looks silly. Anyway, I was saying I think I found a good resting place for the board. It's over there. If I need to write on it during the show, I'm gonna have to either grab it, or I think I could probably quickly run around and hop on the other mic and go right on it and still have a microphone. So I think we can make it work.
Okay.
That, or we're gonna have to find somewhere in your studio for it. I mean, I would love to get it to where we can hang it up, but I think we found a place.
Like where this blow up thingy is?
I mean, that's definitely. I mean, we can't put a camera there, but that's definitely the. We could get rid of that. It was I initially put it over in that corner and was like, we can't. There's too many inside jokes from the Chris Russell show that are visible.
Yeah.
So we just got our little corner over here. The Hoffman Show finds 10 points, Craig currently. No points, Anthony. When we get to 100. Then we buy ourselves lunch.
Sounds great to me.
Excellent. All right. You know what else sounds great? Real things, real people said in real microphones.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
All right. Yesterday we had one that we did not get to. Dion Waiters is a guy that I covered at Syracuse. Oh, that's, God dang it. Is that a 5 or is that a 10?
That is a 5.
Okay, that's a 5 for me. I'll go put it on the board after the show. Dion Waiters is a guy that I covered at Syracuse, and really, I think, misunderstood guy. Went through a lot in his youth, and it kind of came this almost joke of an NBA player. Not that his career was a joke, but like the joke was like Waiters Island, irrational confidence guy. And he was on the Dan Le Batard show and was asked about it. And things took a bit of a serious turn to explain why Dion is the way he is. And I thought this was powerful, potent, and extremely interesting.
Who are your favorite irrational confidence guys? Because it's something that people associate with you. But if I were to play word association with Dion Waiters about who else is an irrational confidence guy, give me the list.
I'm going Allen Iverson. I'm going KD.
But both of those are very reasonable confidences given their skill set, right?
Yeah, we were thinking more Eddie House.
Mario Chalmers.
Mario for sure.
Nah, listen. See, like my irrational confidence come from like real life like situations, like just growing up in the city of Philadelphia. Like like I had to be tough. Like I had to have confidence. I couldn't lack that because I get taken advantage of. Like like just coming up in the inner city where I seen a lot of stuff where like My mom been shot. My dad been shot. My grandma been shot. I lost my best friend to gun violence at 15. I lost 3 cousins, you know, in probably a month. 3 cousins back to back to back. Like, so when I say my I have irrational confidence. Mine come from like real life situations where, like, I had to just go out there and, like, you know, make a way for myself. Y'all may think it's irrational confidence on the court, but it's like, man, it's nothing to me. Like, I didn't survive some real life situations that nobody can even think of. So, you know, mine's a little different, man.
It's such an interesting perspective, and it explains a lot about a guy that I was always pretty fascinated by. And I knew that about Deion from covering him. But it also is the kind of thing where it's like, hey, man, when someone's been through that, how do you get through to them to say, like, yeah, but if you also didn't take 6 bad shots a game, you might actually be better off in the league. But I think when you, like, got to a place doing things a certain way because that's the way you were literally surviving, you're going to go down firing that way. And that's the way Deion played and got better over his career as he matured, but always was going to go down the way he came up. Saquon Barkley. Woo! Giants fans nervous about what he said today about his contract situation. Anthony, while we play this, can you get me the podcast it was from so we can give them the proper credit? Or do you know it off the top of your head? All right, we'll get it. Here's what Saquon said.
I could say "F you" to the Giants. I could say "F you" to my teammates and be like, "You want me to show you my worth? You want to show you how valuable I am to the team? I won't show up. I won't play it down." And that's a play I can use. Anybody knows me. Knows that's not something I want to do, but like it's something that crossed my mind. It's like I never thought I would ever do that, but like now I'm at a point where it's like, Jesus, like I might have to take it to this level, and like, am I willing? Am I prepared to take it to the level? I don't know. That's something I got to sit down and like I got to talk to my family. I got to sit down, talk to my team. Got to really, strategize about this. Can't just like go off of emotions because like I sit here and say like, oh, be mature.
Yeah, because if you don't show up, that's $10 million that you could have had that you didn't. Where's that from, Matt?
The Money Matters podcast.
Yeah, Money Matters. $10 million on the table. All right, we'll see you at the bullpen tomorrow for the Hoffman Show.
Daniel Snyder has agreed to sell the Washington Commanders.
We're gonna have a good time tonight.
Celebrate with us on the station where the DMV goes to talk Commanders, the Team 980, and the Odyssey app.